I don't know, everybody possesses it. Just figuring out how to tap into it and use it in a productive way.
Personally, I guess this is not my own philosophy or thought, but they do say that all the songs have actually been written already, and that we're just remembering them. We're already in the consciousness and cosmos, you know, that come from a higher place, and we basically are remembering. Ooh!
It's there. It's like Monroe said, it's like with him writing songs, they're just out there. You just got to reach out and pull them out of the air. You just got to reach out and find that energy.
Well, I think you have to just imagine yourself as an instrument of that greater power, you know, I think.
I guess the classical definition is that it all arises from chaos. You know, you start with chaos and then some order begins to form out of that. And creation, to me, in a lot of ways, is creating order from chaos.
I guess it comes from the same place that all energy comes from, which is definitely, to me, seems like a higher, more powerful power.
Well, most people see the universe as something taking place somewhere. And I see it as nothing taking place everywhere.
It's an energy that really doesn't have any form, but somehow comes through our personality.
I think the source and creativity and God are all one and the same thing. It comes from inside of us, and it comes from nature, and it's all the same symbol of life, you know.
Man, it's just in the ground or in the sky, or maybe, yeah, I think maybe it comes from the sky into the ground. It's like you're like a lightning rod. If you got something going, you're just kind of like receiving. I don't know what it is.
It's a mystery.
It's exciting. It's the most exciting thing. It is like lightning striking. It's like the experience of it happening is, it's funny because it's like orgasm or something. It's like the most exciting thing other than sex, or as exciting as sex. That's some sex.
Human beings have a lot of things that we're just born with, and creativity is just part of it. It's just one of the things that we have.
And it has to come out. I think the trick is finding a way to get it out.
I think that can be a different process for everybody.
You just got to be fearless, and you got to think, I don't care what they say. You know, when you're soloing or whatever, you got to have that fearlessness there. I know I might make a mistake here or there, but I'm going out and push it to the edge.
It's really a beautiful paintbrush, but you have to not be afraid to pick it up.
Fear is what shuts you down. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, you know, and you know, who doesn't have that? You know, again, that's just part of it.
I think you have to put together parts of your experience to kind of produce creative energy.
If your life is a container like a barrel and you put all these different things in it,
all this information kind of boiling around in your head, and
all of this stuff, all of everything that's happening around us,
then when it spills out, which is almost the creativity part of it, you're going to get whatever was put in it, with the mix of whatever you were DNA-wise, you know.
See, we didn't know it, but we were just cultivating proper habitat for a fungus in the yard.
People think artists or musicians are kind of spacey. Maybe it's because we are. When you're focused on something, you're like, I don't know, it just seems like it's clear, but everything else is like, you don't even care about it anymore while you're working on something. But then if you can't focus, then you know, sometimes you can't tap into it, or sometimes I can't, and I'm just so distracted by everything else. But when I'm really locked in, it's the only thing I can like focus on at once.
If you're really in the zone, I'm totally oblivious to everything, you know, the world doesn't even exist.
But sometimes it can be, it's difficult to get there on occasion. Sometimes it's a lot easier, but some days doesn't really like to come out into the open very often, or that's my experience. But when it does, I really try to listen to that part of me so I can take it and do what I want, allow it to have its way with me, I guess.
And some people seem to just be able to almost summons it at will.
If I was just sitting down to write a song, I'd always start off writing a spiritual song. And to get a melody and a feel and a vibe, because when you sing about Jesus, the Lord, the Creator, and the universe, you know, usually you're connecting to a higher power. And then if you want to change it around to a song about the fight you had last night with your lady, or, you know, how many beer you drank that day or something, or the fact that hitchhiking down the road doesn't make any sense when you're doing it, but you can always switch the words around. But, you know, when I write a song these days, you know, I really don't think too much about it.
Anytime that you're creating, I feel like, whether anyone else acknowledges it or not, I think that it's a reflection of something greater, something spiritual. It's because there's so many things. I mean, emotions aren't tangible, but they're there, and creativity is the same thing, and I think they just go hand in hand with spirituality.
Yeah, I don't think there is a separation between your spirit and your creation, and your creativity and the force and how the music moves through you.
Creativity, where's that coming from? Is that you? Or is it all of us? Is it God? I mean, it's really up to everybody to decide what they think about that.
Since all of us are unique and different, we all have a little something different to say.
I'm usually very satisfied after I've been creative. You know, it's like a good feeling. It's like, okay, everything's still working, stuff's still coming, I still got a few tricks left in me, that kind of stuff.
It's like, all right, I just, you know, I got an idea out there and I'm happy with this idea, you know?
A lot of times it's a feeling in my hands. If something's working, does it feel like it's flowing?
I think when you're at your best or at anything, it's when it's the most, it's just easy and free and fun and just laborless, you know. It's just there's a sense of ease to it and freedom.
It's really freeing once you kind of open the door.
When Dave Grisman and I were deciding we were going to be John Coltrane and Bird, picked up the saxophones, you know. It was halfway crazy, but the other half was absolutely right. It was like, you have to explore these things.
Musically, having good musicians, having a musician that you can play off of, somebody that will make you play better because you want to play better because that person is there. It's not because you're jealous or you're trying to outdo each other. It's just because you want to play something that's equally in your mind as good as this other person is playing, you know.
Improvisationally, I notice when I'm around my heroes, I play better and I get better ideas, and it feels like I'm just vibing off of their energy.
Another thing is to not do too much of the same thing too long.
Don't worry.
Play outside the box, try something different.
I've been down the road of just focusing on what I do, and I'm, you know, and then you realize at some point you run out of gas and you're flat, and there's nothing more you can do. You realize you've got to step outside of what you do and experience other things, and that could be all kinds of different things.
Billy Smith, he's one heck of a creative guy. I love Billy. Billy has that creative spark, that creative drive, that ability to... Now, Billy can sit down with someone, and Billy almost on demand can come up with ideas and explode.
I'll go listen to a new Bob Dylan record, and I've got to go write a song, you know.
This is when I hear something new that I haven't really conceived of or thought of, it immediately makes my mind think of what else is possible.
And so I think, it makes me somehow it starts the turns the creative switch on.
It's very exciting and very fulfilling, I think, because for one thing, I found recently I've been studying this concept called flow, and flow is basically an area that the human brain is being challenged, not too little and not too much, kind of right in a space where you're within your capabilities, but you're really having to think. And the benefit of flow, the reason it's so incredibly addictive, if you will, is that it brings order to the mind. When you have that much concentration about something, it literally makes you stop thinking about everything else, because all of your mental energy, your concentration, has to be focused on the process of creation or the process of inventing or whatever you're focused on at that moment. And the mind, it turns out, is very happy when it's ordered.
I like order.
When the mind is completely filled with chaos, it's often frightening and difficult for people to even manage, and it happens pretty much throughout the day.
I have a little trouble when things are not organized around me, and I'm worried about chaos and stuff,
And there are different things that we do to achieve order in our mind. But I think one of the things I love about the creative process is it puts me in that flow zone, which is a wonderful feeling, because pretty much everything else disappears, and there's no worries or days or concerns or clocks or illnesses or relationships or anything else going on. It's just the activity itself.
That's why people climb mountains, bungee jump, because it's the same deal. You're not thinking.
I'm kind of just playing, and there's this force that's inside of me that's kind of just allowing the music to come out.
The key is not to judge anything before it comes out.
This stuff up here, oh, that's not any good. I mean, we all have that when you write something and immediately it's judged and executed, oh no, that's not it. No, that's a terrible idea, it's just, I know judgment and immediate judgment is something that can shut it down immediately.
Let it flow out of you.
I don't know, it's just a feeling that kind of erupts and it bubbles up, and it flows and it happens naturally.
When the flow is good, it just kind of, the song just seems to come up out of nowhere. If things are aligned to where your brain is tuned in, to where you're able to catch the wave that's floating by, flowing by. So, and that's always a great place to be in. It's not every time. I wish it was.
It's just overwhelming joy,
It feels like, love, and when your personality is sort of out of the way.
That egoic state of mind that wants to crush things.
And it's just happening, and time sort of starts to get fuzzy, and you don't know how long you've been playing or whatever. It feels really, really good. It feels, it's the best feeling in the world.
To me, it's almost like a high. When I really know that it's, that it's happening, it's very, very exciting to me, almost to the point of being overwhelming.
Oh my God! Listen, it's like how does that happen?
It feels really, really good.
I'm floating on cloud 9.
It's a wonderful feeling, really.
And yeah, it's energizing, and it literally lifts you up.
It makes me feel like I can do anything.
It's a connection with nature and all that is natural.
Nature is creativity manifested.
It's like a gift.
It's a gift.
That you get every once in a while, if you're lucky. Some creative energy.
Sometimes it comes from necessity.
Roy Acuff came here to be a fiddle player. He was filling in for Arthur Smith, but he couldn't play very good, so he asked him if he could sing, and that began the singing. Before that, it was all based on instrumental music.
Sometimes it comes from desperation. Some people do their best work when they're the lowest down, And I've been low many times.
I work well off of pain and sorrow.
Or some people do their best work hungover. I mean, I've done a lot of that too.
Mood-wise, I don't think, good mood, bad mood, happy, sad, I don't think that really comes into play, because I guess you write music, you have ideas depending on what you feel like. Well, that's part of the voices that that one caters to, light, dark, all that. If you feel blue, you play the blues. If you don't, you don't.
I think the important thing is to also be aware of inspiration, because I think it's always out there, but a lot of times people build up walls around themselves, and they won't let themselves feel it or acknowledge it, because it's a more pain-free existence to turn off inspiration and to kind of close up and build walls in your mind and around your feelings. And part of the creative process is being open to how you feel, and to let yourself hurt or let yourself be hurt, or acknowledge and delve into the pain when you feel it. Or the same can be said for positive feelings,
But creative energy is a funny thing, it comes and goes. Sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't,
It just has to be some sort of grace.
I think dreaming is awesome.
I've always been a dreamer.
I think our dreams are our teachers. And there's so many different relationships you can have with your teacher.
I've had some very strange dreams while I've been down here, but they've been daydreams. And I've actually been day nightmares in a sense and stuff. I don't really understand, dreaming in the sense of its relevance to creative energy or anything on that level, but there's something to be said. It's one of those unexplainable, magical things that happens to us and stuff. And I've had some very positive dreams too, but again, it's almost maybe like a song. If you can actually remember the dream, you wake up, you can actually tell somebody about what you were dreaming the night before, then it might be something worth paying attention to. But I mean, I've read into dreaming,
Our buddy Dale Kreider talks about the song of the universe, which is the whole of creation makes this song, this music, if you can just be quiet enough and still enough to hear it, and then it can come through you, and however you perceive it. So I think it's a good idea to get out of the house more often.
The closest we can get to God in a way. To me, that's how I can believe in God, that God exists. Just look around you. I think anyways.
I think it's one of those things where you can set the table, so to speak, but you can't guarantee a good meal.
There's not a set, repeatable thing. You have to be creative to get to the creative space sometimes.
The main thing is just, once you're on a roll, just don't stop. As far as initiating that, I don't think you really can.
Somebody like Shad's just extremely humble about this gift, that he has to just have complete openness and freedom and what he plays, and it's just, it's as natural to him as breathing, and that's why it's so good.
You can't make it happen. It just you just kind of have to get out of the way and let it flow through you,
Because that is how the energy starts to move through you.
That's sort of a meditative state, of listening and creating at the same time. You're being active, but you're also being passive together, and you reach this balance point where it really works.
You can be creative about farming. You can be creative about anything that you do. You can be creative in your work, in how you drive across town. I mean, and how you cook the books. I mean, you heard them say creative accounting. I mean, it takes many different forms, but for me, when I'm in the zone, I can get completely lost in it, and I can look up 6 hours later and just go, wow.
You can take like something image-wise from a dream and put it into something that you're working on in the daytime, you know, when you're awake.
Waking up with the answer. That to me is profound. That can be a real big deal.
And I'll be like, no way, no way. So I'll like try and change it. I'll be like, no, it's not going to go there. It's going to go here. And it like doesn't.
So, you know, then what's the difference between what I'm seeing walking around in my waking state and what I'm seeing in my dreaming state? If I'm seeing all the vivid detail, hearing sounds, feeling the wind in both, so then what's the difference? And it makes you question your waking state, you know, then.
It just helps when you see things that aren't necessarily real, but they're so real to you in some state when you're asleep. Like, you're in that dream, and so it's real. And sometimes it produces creativity from that, I think. It unlocks it a little bit.
If you go through all what you have to go through to do that, and then you can't do what you came there to do, then what is it?
And that's something you can't really always explain.
Sometimes when I sleep, I'll wake up and, oh, okay. All of a sudden, I'll have this idea. It's like, okay, so it somehow worked itself out in my sleep or in a dream. So I don't know how that works. It's a mystery.
I've worked with so many different people, and there's so many different. There's one coming in now. Tim O'Brien's one. Tim O'Brien's very creative and a great songwriter. He can do it all. You know, he can do it all. He can produce, he can sing, play, do everything.
Where does it come from? Where does it go, Cotton Eye Joe? That's basically the thing.
That creative juice is flowing and you're really getting it, and you know there's something out there, you can't quite touch it, but you know it's there. You're trying to find that puzzle piece. It may be a lyric, or it may be part of a melody, or it may be you're designing a timber frame house and you're trying to figure out the structure of it. It's like being high, kind of, for me. Not that I've been high, but it's really a remarkable, wonderful, warm feeling. It's as though that's what you were meant to do in life.
I think it's the reason we're here, is to learn all the lessons that this spirit has to learn from our experiences with one another as humans, and one form of expression of those experiences is art. And so I think creativity, the soul, and the experiences we have become catalysts for creation of art.
You have to get sort of outside your comfort zone at first.
It's scary to be creative.
It is really scary.
Because you have to stand behind it, and a lot of people will question you or wonder what your motives are. One of the reasons why I didn't become a songwriter was because I thought that it was too personal.
And once you accept something, you're putting it out in the world as yours, thus opening it up for the judgment of everyone else, you know. And then you're in this kind of vulnerable state, like, oh, this is something I made. Be gentle. You know, like.
It used to be I would write a tune and I'd show it to Edgar and I'd just, hey, I got a really cool new tune. Isn't this cool? He'd be, that's okay.
Yeah, I've got notebooks full of songs and stuff like that I've, barely played for anyone. And like, sometimes you'll, okay, I'll think I'm in kind of a safe place. I might try one, and when you do it, you're just like, oh, can I take that back? Everything I just did? It's like, it's tough, man.
I think we have to be careful about critiquing other people's songs.
Well, I really like criticism. I'm looking for it, especially in teachers that I really trust. And I think my best teachers are the most critical of me.
I think I have a hard time taking that kind of information, even from somebody that I really respect. But I guess when you play in a band or like that kind of setting is a good format for kind of learning how to use other people's ideas about what is good. And sort of temper yourself in that way, and not just be like, I'm always going to do exactly what I want to do when I want to do it, but kind of having that mind meld with a couple other people that you really enjoy making music with, and kind of learning how they think about things, and that certainly, I think, shapes you and makes you better at sort of taking other people's criticism and then actually like working it into the way that you view yourself, which could be harmful, but I guess if you already have a strong sense of self musically, then it's a good thing to think, what will other people think?
And sometimes it feels bad and it makes me think, well, I don't want to show anything to anyone right now until it's better or something, but I get over that pretty quickly. And so I think I'm looking for judgments on it, at least people that I value their judgment.
I've had my feelings really hurt about songs that they probably weren't that good, but you put so much into them, and come on, just nod your head and whatever. I mean, it's not a competition, and Nashville is, it comes down to that sometimes. You get in some of these song swapping. It's like cutting heads, So, anyway, it's, you get very protective of your little creation.
It's tough, but I guess you just have to sort of just jump out there. I don't know.
I certainly can take things really personally, which I guess is a good thing, because you are really connected to what you've created, and if you don't feel super strongly about it, that might be a sign of not really believing in it.
I think if I'm in touch with myself, then the flow is going to occur.
There's a lot of people that don't want to get in touch with that source because they're afraid of what it might reveal. They're afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of they're afraid of their true selves.
A lot of times people don't get it, but when people do get it, it kind of makes it valid. But I guess you could get pretty schizophrenic from rejection, or like some people just sit inside a shack and paint till they die and don't talk to anybody, So that, there's a lot of alone time in the life of a music person, painter, artist of some sort. Like, there's a lot of in your own head. And then a lot of those people do drugs too, and that affects probably being alone and thinking all the time and having done too much acid or something.
Sometimes I wish I was a little more far out because sometimes I feel pretty normal, but which is, I don't know, who cares?
Some people find it in a bottle. Some people find it on the end of a marijuana cigarette. I don't know. It's something that it's fuck. Let me think about that question. God damn. Where does it come from? Fuck, I don't know how to talk about this shit, man.
I think, well, I suppose I haven't totally experimented with that to its fullest, but I think in the way that everything that you're taking in is going to affect what's coming out, that it's definitely it could be helpful if you feel like you're in some kind of rut and you need to be freed up in a certain way, whether it's kind of just loosening your brain up or kind of slowing it down or speeding it up. I guess I'm not opposed to the idea that could be really helpful. And it just would, it either enhances or detracts, but either one of those is could be cool because it's changing how you normally operate.
There's a real slippery slope because, you can actually have very real, profound experiences when you're influenced by whatever drug it is, you know. And I think it's important to remember that it's about the experience rather than the drugs, you know. And I think the reason people take drugs and get into that stuff is because they're yearning for something else.
You know, a lot of people in our business smoke or drink or, you know, try to get in that space. But I think the space that everybody's trying to get to is just a state of relaxation, you know, where you're having fun with it and just letting it go.
When I'm using some sort of intoxicant, sometimes it's kind of like dreams too, where I think I'm getting really good ideas and I should write them down, and then when I'm in the other dimension I look at them and I'm like, oh, that worked then, but I can't necessarily apply it to the sober world.
You know, you get your favorite chair. Some people drink a glass of wine. I can't do that because then I'd have 2 glasses of wine. I might as well just put it up. Then I'm like this.
If you can realize that there's already a tremendous wealth of peace and joy and creativity within yourself, then you won't need to experience it with the use of drugs. You know, get it from yourself, and I think that's the ultimate goal.
Nice thing about Nashville, I mean, being from Cincinnati, which you got a big bluegrass community, but it's so molded, and you don't need to do it that way. Don't make it yours. It's got to be done the way it was done. That to me stifles any kind of creative potential you might have for something. You can't branch out and learn and create if you're stifled that way.
If you're worried about things too much, then sometimes it's just hard to let it flow, you know?
I think there are practices that we can become familiar with that can allow us to understand our connection with our mind, and like meditation or just breathing or yoga practices of connecting to the self within are just a general guideline of practices that I think help. But for me, I get really creatively inspired when I come into contact with another creative being.
Creative energy flows through you. It kind of bounces from person to person. So now, if somebody's creating it, you kind of draw off of those people too.
When you're around those people and when you're hearing music or seeing art that's been created by those people, you just know that it's coming from a place, a real deep place, and you can feel it. You know, it sort of brings you into another space, and it really gets me high sometimes. You know, no drugs involved.
It just kind of radiates from you.
It's like the band experience.
I was at a jam at Shelby, the bass player's house, and we played Old Dangerfield. And it was my first experience playing with Nashville musicians that were just, when it comes time to like take a break on a song, they're just so supportive and intuitive and connected to each other and you and following and listening that you can almost just like leave your body and the things that you worry about that might hinder your creativity. And it's just, I was thinking it was like floating on a cloud of backup musicians. And I remember it going around the circle, and I was really enjoying the song. And I remember it being my turn to play, and I played, but I only remember it coming to me and it not being my turn anymore. I don't remember playing at all, because I was just so floating away on what they were doing. And every time I play Old Dangerfield, almost, I tell that story. I was like, this is what it's like to play in Nashville with these people that are so in tune with each other and really get it.
And you can pass that along as well.
What I like about playing with Peter is he's always trying to present the opportunity for greatness, some great moment. And he's okay when as long as the opportunity's there. If it doesn't turn out to be something great and special, that's okay, because the opportunity's going to be there again. And so it's just providing the situation and then just letting it go. And anytime I've had a preconceived notion of how I think things are going to go in his band, that's when I have a really tough time, you know, because I'm putting those boundaries up and it never goes there. And if it goes somewhere amazing one night and you want it to head that way again, you know, it's almost like Peter makes sure it doesn't go that road the next time, just so something new and fresh and in the moment can happen again. And that's where I think what I've learned from him a lot, especially about just making music in general, and just, you know, even traveling, is just being in the moment. And I think that is really important with creative energy.
I've always felt like pushing the boundaries, whatever they were, you know. If I was told not to do something, there was all the more reason to do it.
Don't try to play over your head too much. A lot of people make that mistake. They try to play over their head, then they play themselves into a corner and they don't know what to do, you know. So I think to keep it going, to play something that you know, something you feel good with, and something you hear, something you can hear your way out of. When you start a solo, you need to maybe know how it's going to end when you start it, you know. That helps.
Sometimes you just feel the urge to do something different, step out on that ledge. Because if you don't step out on the ledge, you'll never know what the view is.
Hartford used to talk about Earl and Monroe being radicals whenever they were coming along and you know, young, and how they were pissing off everybody in the music scene because they were playing so fast and doing this new thing. And of course, they're the ones that most everybody these days looks at as being the old guys.
It's so much nicer being here with a lot of people that are trying to create stuff instead of just doing the same thing that they've done over and over and over and over.
Music happens once, and then after that, you're just trying to recreate it, you know.
Some people are satisfied with that, and I think that's what stunts creativity.
When you play bluegrass, you do have that on your shoulders. You have that tradition. And I feel like in a lot of ways we are still living off what Earl Scruggs, you know, and Bill Monroe, that excitement that they created. You know, we're still just, that's still really, that was the big bang. It really was. It's a great analogy.
Bluegrass is a funny thing because what people do, and I don't know why, but people tend to want to record the same songs in the same key at the same tempo with the same licks and the same everything, note for note. And you know, I don't believe Bill Monroe would have recorded a song that wasn't in his key, you know. And why would somebody else want to do it in his key when it's not their key? It's a song. It's not. I've never understood that part of it.
No matter how hard you try to sound like somebody else, you'll always sound like yourself.
Imitation is supposed to be the biggest, the greatest form of flattery, you know, and I think they do it out of respect and stuff like that. But that's always it's always puzzled me why somebody would want to try to sing something that's not in their key. I've never understood that.
Hearing Earl Scruggs play the banjo for the first time just galvanized my brain, and I was stunned. I mean, I couldn't believe it, and I thought to myself, if I could ever learn to do anything remotely like that, I would never be blue again. It would be like the thing that would make my life worthwhile. And that's such a powerful thing that it makes you want to emulate that. But also, you have to be lucky enough to have an outlet for the little bits and pieces that you've already learned. In other words, playing with other people, so that you use what you've learned and it becomes your own. I mean, it doesn't do just to learn everything Earl Scruggs did, and he's already done it. You know, you need to find your own way. Joe Drumright, another great bluegrass banjo player, and a person I was fortunate enough to call a friend, always said, "You have to dig your own ditch."
You know, when somebody copies somebody or somebody imitates somebody is the highest form of flattery. See, I don't believe that. I believe that it can express to somebody, you know, as far as what they liked, you know, about what somebody did. But I believe, to be fair to somebody, you know, look, there was only one George Jones, and I was a big George Jones fan. There was only one Merle Haggard. There was only one Vern Godston. There was only one Carter Stanley, one Roy Lee Centers, one Keith Whitley, one Ralph Stanley, one Bobby Osborne, one Frank Sinatra, one Johnny Mathis, and the list can go on. And what it does, it just really kind of even brings me back to as it was in our home when I was little, how music was always so much a part of it. I think things that you like, I believe everything that you like about what somebody does, what Johnny Mathis does, what Keith Whitley did on that song, what Roy Lee Centers did on that song, what Bobby Osborne did on that song, you know, Charlie, whatever it was, I literally believe that there's some of all of that in there for a person. I believe it's the same for a musician. Now, you get a fiddle player, they may not pull the right hand and have the coordination that Baker had with the right and left hand at the same time, but there may be a lick that was a Baker lick. There may be something that they did that they got, a Benny Martin or whatever. And I think it's a culmination of a lot of different people and a lot of different things that you loved that gets instilled in you.
You know, I remember having conversations in college with my buddies, and we, you know, you're learning all this material learning, and you feel like you're emulating and copying, and we're talking about players that have their own sound, and like, man, how do you get to that point? How do you find your own sound? And you know, and then we were all wondering about it, and then we ended up actually kind of talking with each other and talking about each other's sounds and say, you know what, actually, that seems like it's kind of developing a little bit. Well, you know, so how did we get to this point? Because it wasn't a conscious effort to say, now I'm going to sound like me, or here, it was just, we continued to chase all the different things that were of interest to us. And for me, I think that the way that I play has developed because in this manner, because I'm looking to all sorts of different instruments for inspiration. It can be easy to, you know, there's a million great violinists, jazz, bluegrass, but, you know, and you could just spend time on, you know, studying only them. Which I've spent a bunch of time on that, but not as much as other folks have. I've tried to learn things that were coming from the banjo, that were coming from the bass, that were coming from the drum set, that were coming from saxophones. You know, I was learning the way that all these other instrumentalists and vocalists that I really just loved and did something for me emotionally, I would spend time learning what they were doing. And I think that helped, you know, shape what I'm doing in a unique way, because you're getting inspiration from instruments and things that might not normally be played on your instrument. So it forced me to think differently and try and, you know, sometimes fit in a square, you know, peg in a round hole. Sometimes, you know, I just tried to do everything, participate in every musical situation that I found interesting.
One of the best things in the world that a person can ever do is singing from their heart. And I get asked a lot of times, well, you know, singing from your heart, doesn't it have to be a kind of, listen, it's got to be something that you truly love and something that you really care enough about that you want to express to somebody. You know, even if it's to the point, you know, that, look, I just want to prove to everybody I can sing. Well, then you can do that. You know, you can get all the licks down. You can copy anybody you want to. You can do all that other kind of stuff. But But I think if you're really trying to cultivate something for you, then I believe all those ingredients that I mentioned, I really do believe that all of that will get filtered in and put together in a package, and that's what you are.
I needed to learn how to play like Bill Monroe. Well, I still can't play exactly like Bill Monroe. I can do a pretty good one, you know, if I want to, but nobody can play it just like him, and that's our different personalities. But, and it is a challenge to find your own voice. But if you enjoy the search, it can be found.
Mike Compton is incredibly a creative guy within a fairly rigid style. So when we're talking about language, he's working a lot with Bill Monroe's language and what we call traditional mandolin language, but he recombines it in a fresh way every time he starts to play. And every time you play, you know it's him. It's completely, you know, his own. He's made that little language his own, and he speaks very differently than Bill Monroe did with it.
Well, I read something one time that said within the boundaries is where all the freedom is. If you know what the guidelines are, then you have a better idea of what you have to work with. Whereas if it's instead of trying to drink out of a fire hose, you have a loose set of guidelines, which gives you sort of a script, may be a little bit too closed off, but having the guidelines sort of, I find it gives me an area to dwell in that I can work with, that rather than just trying to take stuff from everywhere. Well, Hartford described, I'm going to say something that he said, I thought, which was a brilliant observation. He said, everybody's face is made up of the same parts. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, 1 nose, preferably. Some have hair, some don't, but that's a minor detail. He said, it's a rigid framework, but within that framework, there are infinite possibilities.
It's interesting to write in a narrow focus. You know, I mean, think about the blues. I mean, really, there's only one melody to the blues, you know. But of course, you can, you know, you make variations and everything. But in the bluegrass thing, you got these elements, these shapes to work with, and then you can, of course, you space out and go beyond it all. But it's so interesting to go back into a melodic tradition like Carter Stanley. He basically writes this same melody that in different ways all the time.
I think we all have to have like a mentor, whether it's someone that's even alive or not, but you have to have something that you follow as your creative or musical like role model, right? And you know, a lot of great musicians have picked apart, you know, musicians that came before them and completely learned their style, and then they're got this solid foundation. But it's not that you want to copy that person, right? So how do you break out of that into your own style?
You know, make it your own by really investing yourself completely into it.
Be your own voice.
Kind of differentiates you from the robots and the drones.
You got to put your soul in it.
Well, before I ever started to try to improvise at all, I've just been playing for a couple of years, and my brothers and I had a band, you know, and we met these guys, Dean McGraw and Peter Ostrushko. Dean's a great guitar player, and Peter's a mandolin player and fiddle player. And we got to know those guys a little. I mean, we went over to Dean's house one day, my brothers and my folks and I, and we just sat there and kind of talked with him and picked a little bit, and we asked him, because we didn't know, I didn't even know what improvising was. We were just trying to play tunes, you know, memorize them, and so we asked him, I don't remember which one of us did, but we asked him, said, how do you, you know, what do you do, how do you improvise, or do you change what your arrangement, do you have it? Is it made up? Do you ever? And he goes, no, man. He goes, man, I just blow, you know. He's just a total musician, you know, and just blow. And it was funny because after that we went home and we just started doing that, basically just messing around, you know, and not, you know, just trying to change things. And that was really, when he said that, that was when my brother and I started to try to improvise, you know, and be more creative with, and that was advice I got, and it I guess it worked for me, I don't know.
At some point I thought I'm a good stealer, I'm a good imitator, but it's time to, you know, really create and come up with my own sound, and I feel like it, you know, gives your music more power, definitely.
If you don't make that jump, then you haven't entered the creative process.
The pure acceptance of inviting a creative moment feels like the best thing ever. It's, you know, I always, like, really when I think of a good song especially, but even if I have a very creative moment that has nothing to do with music, or maybe it's cooking or just an idea, like I will get tears in my eyes. Like, and I know then it's good. I'm like, it's good, all right.
Creative works that I'm the most proud of are the ones that seem to have written themselves and I had no part in it. And it just came from somewhere, and it came quickly, like a waterfall.
Give a kid a truck, put him in a living room, just on a carpet. You think he could make a whole world happen with that truck and that carpet? I think so. I think he'd have streets, he'd have collisions, he'd have all kinds of things that he would be seeing and creating with this truck, and what he knew, what his input of what he knew, and then he, you know, would go, maybe even go past that, but definitely everything he knew up to that point he would create in that space where we would look at it and go, you know, if we were walking by, go, oh, this, you know, Johnny, hey, whoa, it might be a little loose there, but Johnny's making this whole world happen. You know, kids in a sandbox and a pail and a shovel. Man, they can be on the ocean, they could be, you know, digging a ditch, you know, making a house, they're building, whatever they do, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you give simple things, you give kids, they're great. It's awesome. Look at that. That is just like so great. What is that?
Hello. I've got something I've got to say. I have these legs. I want to be. I heard you do this thing on creativity. And
kids can create conversations and create situations, make believe, and most of them are encouraged to do that at an early age. Especially kids that don't have anything. You think about kids that are like, say, kids in Africa, where they take a wire and they make these little cars that they make for toys. You know, somebody had to creatively think of that to take the place of something that doesn't exist, you know, physically. And sometimes you can do it mentally, but you know, that's a creative process. But we're surrounded by creativity. Everything that we involve our lives with is by design created by some creative person.
Even the same, I mean, you can be in a jam session or just playing a show or whatever, and there's at least, I mean, they're out there trying to create, even if it's a song that's been done 5 billion times, they're still trying to create something as they're playing that old song. Instead of just, well, this is the way it was played, I've got to play it like this. They're trying to tap into that creative energy, and and trying to get that to flow through them where they can come up with something new and something different, fresh.
If you take that approach, you could, you know, play the same song every day, but, you know, maybe you're feeling differently, so have different dynamics, different bowings, different fingerings, different articulations, you know, different variations. But I think that's like the best thing in life is just creativity and how it like responds to the moments that you're in so well. Like, you know, on gigs when you're trying to relate to people, you never know like how the people in the audience are going to be, if they're going to be sad or happy or laughing or crying. So lots of times when you're playing, you know, if you're prepared with like a creative, improvising mindset, then it's a way to really get in touch with your listeners and like get in touch with you know, deeper emotional qualities in yourself. And but yeah, really, you know, just about everything, you know, is some type of creativity in life. And yeah.
As a traditionalist, which I mean, I'm not afraid to try different things in the traditional vein. It's out there, it's possible. They say you've got to have to be a traditionalist. I think most people put like a boundary on a traditional musician. Say if you try something that's not exactly the way Scruggs or Don Reno, Ralph Stanley, I mean, you can't do it their way because they've already done it.
Bill did it that way. Or Earl played it like that. Well, hell, that was Earl. You know, Earl's gone, and if they want to hear it played like Earl, why don't they just go get Earl's record of it? You know?
That was their creativity. I mean, you've got to find your own.
A lot of creative energy feeds off of other people. You know, it's like some of the greatest songwriters have never written a song by themselves. They co-write a song where they can feed off someone else's energy. Even making records, you know, it's creative energy is something. It's like if you got one guy that's a bummer in the room, it can kill the groove, kill the energy in the room. You know.
I have written with some folks that you know, if you said the wrong line or if they didn't feel like the line fit, you know, kind of seemed like it broke the mood.
I don't have that like tons of experience with co-writing because I find it really difficult actually when you have to kind of set a pace for the creativity, that you kind of have to match the pace of whoever you're trying to create with, or else, you know, one person will kind of take the lead, and it's really hard, I think, to catch up once somebody else had their ideas are like coursing forward and you're like, whoa, wait up, like I haven't fully like processed how that's gonna work. So it's hard to add to something when it starts like getting away from you like that.
Several times I've had a song that I felt like, this is really good, you know, and your co-writer feels like there's something unfinished, or they want to add something or take something away, which is fine. It's their, they've got half of it too. But then you stand at a point where you say, well, what do we do? Do I just take the song the way I like to do it, which is what I basically have done. I've written songs with people. If you listen to their version of it, you won't even really know it's the same song, probably. You know, and then I'll take my version of it and do it a certain way, and but that's okay too. But you know, you start criticizing each other, or critiquing each other, not criticizing, but critiquing each other's work. So it's a touchy thing, you know. Whose opinion is the end-all opinion? Most guys are not like that, but occasionally you'll have that experience, and to me that puts a damper on the whole result. That the thing you've created now doesn't feel quite as special because you know that guy's not real happy with it. and you were real happy until he was unhappy with it, and now you're like, well, is it done? Is it finished? Is it the best it can be?
I think it can be really cool when you find that pace, and you're both moving along at the same rate, and you're both really open to trying anything, and you know, you can throw something out and they'll really be open to trying it, and that nobody will be too attached to anything. I think that's really important, to be able to just put an idea out there and know that it's being like really thought through, but that it might not be what you end up with, and being okay with that, and also just being in a situation where everybody is willing to try anything, like even like this one guy that I worked with, we wrote a bunch of tunes together, and it was mainly like one of us would bring a tune to the other one, and then we would find out how to kind of create a second part to it, or like a harmonic thing going on behind it, and what ended up being really fun for that was sitting at a piano and just like making up totally weird chords, and just like each of us being like, oh, that's kind of cool, how about this, and like just actually physically doing it, and thinking through each idea on its own, and giving them all kind of the space to breathe and see what works, and just being like, yeah, let's do that, and let's also do that, and kind of using it all.
I did a record one time with Charlie Daniels, and you know, he said, listen, this is how I do this. Everybody's got ideas, and I want to hear all of them. He said, doesn't mean we're going to do all of them, but we got to try them all. And if we don't like it, we'll throw it out. And I thought that was really telling of him. Like, part of his success was that he wasn't afraid to listen to other people and let other people weigh in and make things. You know, everybody has an opinion about something, and that's a creation. It's a creative process. You might hear something completely differently than the way I'm hearing it. But what I'm hearing right now is that we ought to try this. And you throw that out there. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if you're truly trying to create something, you have to try everything, you know.
Because I think sometimes ideas can be dismissed, like when you have like a more dominant presence in your like writing scene, they'll just go for what they think is a good idea. And I don't know, you can't totally let that happen, because obviously one person could write something great on their own, but it's, if you're trying to do something together, you have to have a good balance there.
I think creative energy comes from inside each individual in its own way.
It's different for everybody.
There's no one way that everyone has to do it.
Well, true creative energy, like to me, like whenever I happen to like lock into that true creative energy is when you're just kind of like totally at one, like your mind, your fingers, your physicalness, your body, and your like heart or soul is just like totally linked up.
For me, it's the people that I'm surrounding myself in, the sort of energy of the space I'm creating in has a big impact on what I do. You know, it may not for everybody, but it does for me. So surrounding myself with people that I can feel comfortable with and are on the same page as me is an important thing for me. Like I say, it may not be for everybody. And just trying too hard can do it, can restrict the flow.
Lately, I've been working on a lot of technique issues, you know, which, you know, you might think, well, that's not going to help creativity, but it really has helped me a lot, because I feel like I had a lot of right hand issues where I just was working too hard, you know. I look at some of my musical idols, and there's an effortless thing going on there, and I think I have that to a certain extent, but with my right hand I just was feeling like I was playing too hard or working too hard, and I think that that's common in bluegrass, you know, especially, you know, for my instrument, in a bluegrass band, you know, typically you got the banjo, guitar, and dobro, they're all in the same register and pretty much the same tuning, you know, very similar tuning. So you're continuously sort of fighting for some sonic space, and what have noticed, I think that it's something I've dealt with for a long time, but just sort of realizing it now consciously and trying to deal with it, is that playing so hard just to kind of like get above, you know, the sound that the rest of the band is making. And on stage, obviously, it's difficult with monitor mixes. And but anyway, I had a lot of bad habits, and what I have found is that when you're playing really hard or trying really hard, it shuts off your creativity also. You know, you're improvising your ideas, and so I've really been trying to just not play so hard or not try so hard, and for me, a lot of it was just that physical tension, you know. So it's been interesting, you know, a few years. It's hard to break habits that you've been forming for 30 years, but it's been good. I can definitely feel it, you know, starting to pay off.
The funny thing is you can, if you're in an art that's performing, say for a crowd, you can see the flow working in the audience immediately. If you're trying too hard, and maybe I take a solo that's improvised and I'm really forcing it and I want to be awesome and I have this constricted feeling, the crowd tends to not really respond that well. But if I somehow am able to not be influencing what's happening too much and just letting it go,
just letting it happen,
you can see the people sort of light up and get excited, and so when you're not forcing it, so it's nice. You have sort of a measurement of how your flow is doing that's more than just in your head. You can actually see it working, like in an audience or not, you know. So if things aren't working, you can say, man, I need to change my state here somehow, you know.
Not worrying so much about, well, do they like what I played? Just taking that out of it altogether, because I think that edits your creativity.
When things are going right, and I really feel the energy moving through me, I feel like I'm a spectator. Like I have an experience when I'm singing, like I'm out here somewhere and this person is singing and playing music or whatever, and I might get the thought, oh, gee, that guy hit a good note, or that felt good, you know. But it's more like, I don't know, it's a really tremendous experience.
The cool thing about the performing arts is you can actually see if something you're doing is working and see if the flow is happening by the look on people's faces, you know.
I'm a big believer in spiritual things, and I believe, you know, if you're doing, for instance, I'm a Christian, but I know voodoo people, what they do, they bring in the spirit, you know, they conjure it. And it's being a good songwriter to conjure that energy. Sit down with your guitar and you start playing this good melody. John Hartford believed in melody. He believed that all this other hook line thing was just another whole world of writing, and not anywhere near as good as like good melody writing. So he would write a song by the melody first, and he'd put a word in the melody that sounded good, like I've been there and I'm beside what's here, and he would put the words on the melody. And so that was how he would harness his inspiration. He'd pull it down with the music. And then there's people who pull that energy together by a good hook line. I mean, the country songwriter, they have that, on the other hand, there's a golden band. You know, you start playing with words, and you start getting that inspiration. And that's how you kind of conjure it. And I think that's what all of us do.
I get started on something, and then there I am sitting there struggling with an and or a if or a but, or, you know. Don't worry about that. Deal with the big picture and get there, and then you can go back and edit, because you can always take stuff out. I mean, I think every time you finish a song, you should look back and try to take out every unnecessary word that you can find. And almost every time you can find a lot of unnecessary words and syllables and stuff that serve no purpose, and the meaning is still the same without them. They don't have to be there. They're just... And I think a lot of the modern day songwriters are really guilty of this. Sometimes it's dizzying to me to listen to some of these wordy songs. It's just like... I was telling a guy the other day, played me a song, wanted my comment on it, and he had a good story and he had a good, overall it was good, but it was so many words and so many, and I said, okay, let's try it. I said, you tell me which you like better, A or B. A is word, 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 word. Here's B. Word, 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 word. He goes, I love B. I said, well then do B. You know, all of those words are the same thing. They mean the same thing in the end, and just use less and say what you mean and say it with passion, and you got the same thing.
And it gets down to that, the nitty-gritty.
But I think everybody's got it in them to a degree, because you have to create, get the inspiration to mow your grass. You know, you have to think about it and go out there and push your mower and mow your grass, and you got to get behind it somehow and to get that accomplished. But at the same time, you've got to get, you got to conjure that. You got to pull it from somewhere.
You get up every day; it's different. Even if stuff's similar, you know, you still do everything just a little bit different every day. Like, you can't help but be like a creative improviser in life, right? Even if you tried not to, it'd be like hard to not be a totally like creative improviser.
And every one of us have to do that. Human beings, it's the nature of a human being to create, but most of us don't realize. Most of us deny ourselves of that and say, oh, it could never be me, or I could never have that, or I can never do that, or you know. So, but it's in the air.
It's almost like you're discovering something that's already there, you know, and you're wiping the dirt off to expose the song.
We're not making this up. It's just going through us. It's all out there, and you know, people in the 21st century, it's hard to find notes that haven't been played before.
Some of the best music that there is the most simple and simplified type of music, and I think that's the most easiest thing for people to receive, is simplicity.
You know, the main thing about like old time is melody.
I think as a fiddle player, it's kind of like everything to me in the musical sense. It's been kind of hammered into my brain, not in a like aggressive way, just in the way that like what I've spent so much of my time doing musically has been learning tunes, which are all about that. And that's kind of the only way to be able to distinguish one tune from another, you know, is like some slight thing in the melody that has like a really giant effect that you wouldn't think, like, of just a couple notes in a different order would be so great and different. But I think once you have that kind of catalog of all these different melodies in your head, then that becomes like the thing that you're going for when you try to make your own. And sometimes I think it can be really kind of hindering to have all that information, because either when you're learning something new, like you have this other thing that's being like drawn up because it's really similar in some way. It's like the kind of like sciencey like matrix of your brain. It's like, oh, that reminds me of that, and that's like gonna sort of help me remember it, but also it might make me not able to remember it because it's too similar to something else that's already occupying that like neuron pathway or whatever. But yeah, I think the importance of melody is just totally huge to me. And
that's the strongest. That's one of the strongest things that I think is out there is a good strong melody, because a lot of these tunes have been around for, you know, 100, 200 years. And so how can they last that long? Because they're good, you know, and they can stick with people, you know. And I think there's less of an egoic approach to old time playing, because it's not about, look at me, I'm going to cut that banjo player with my, you know, my hot solo here. You know, it's like there's more of that in bluegrass. You know, it's more of that, you know, take turns and everybody show out and, like, you know, oh, he got a hand. I'm going to get, they didn't clap for me. They clapped for him. Ah, God. Guitar player always gets a hand. You know. But, you know, in old time music, it's just about the melody, and oftentimes people are just playing more together as a cohesive unit, hopefully, and it's about uplifting the tune.
I love Adam. He's one of my favorite people on earth. He inspires me a lot. He can piss me off, but you know, I know what to expect from Adam. I've known him long enough now to where, you know, nothing surprises me, and I don't know. He works hard at bringing out a good experience in everybody, you know, and making things comfortable, you know, and not too much pretense, you know. So he has a way of bringing fun to any situation.
I'm like a river boy. Have been since I was a little kid. I just stare at the water. It's a calm, peaceful feeling when you're watching the river flowing by. Again, it's a consistent flow of energy. It just never keeps giving. I'm not a big swimmer or anything, but I get into water that's so cold, most people wouldn't dream of doing it. But the feeling of jumping into St. Croix River at the end of October for about 40 seconds, you know, that's my crack cocaine.
Well, I think being healthy is good for it. I think good nutrition, I think good exercise, good relationship with your fellow man and with the earth.
The great thing for me has been to think about, like, the people I'm playing for, you know, and what they're experiencing, and feeling more like I'm here for them as opposed to I'm here to make everyone think I'm good or whatever, you know. So if you can have a good way to get into that flow is to sort of try to remove yourself from the equation.
You can get in your own way a lot of times.
There are people that want to, you know, they definitely want to force their creativity out to their people, and they don't care who gets it and who doesn't, and that's kind of an egocentric sort of thought, is that I don't care who likes it or who doesn't like it. It's me and it's mine, and I created it. You know, okay, well, you can take that at 2, or you can take it at 5, or you can put it all the way to 11. You know, everybody's kind of different. And again, there's some people that just do not want to rise above the fray. They just want to stay in there with everybody else. And your ego will drive you to pushing your creativity to different levels or onto certain people or situations.
When I'm in the moment of creation, and I'm really in it, then I'm not thinking about the actual creation itself, the fruit of my labors. I'm just being the laborer, and it's with all the love you can have to be that laborer. But the moment I start idealizing or eating the fruit, if you will, wanting the fruit to be tasty or wanting other people to admire the taste of my fruit, I think it's my own, that could be my own ego just coming out and then shattering my creative spirit.
The ego is probably the biggest enemy to the creative space that we're talking about. Because, you know, anytime that desire to be something that you aren't, or be something more than you are, that's when it's going to kill that feeling. Because really all you have to remember is that you are complete already. And I think it's just a matter of allowing that to come out. You know, it's like there's no amount of hours spent in the practice room that are gonna let that spirit come out. It's really kind of like a way of being.
In general, it really is, at least for years, about the song and making them sound good. Working with producer, helping them to help the rest of the band and to help the singer have a hit. That's what it wasn't about. Hey, look how fast I am, and listen to this. It wasn't about yourself. It was about everybody other than yourself. And then when you do that, you actually come out smelling like a rose.
That seems to be a good way to get into the flow, to try and remove yourself from why you're playing. And you can broaden that into, like, if you look at your whole reason you do art, if you can try and remove yourself from that, not just from a particular performance, but from the whole reason why you do something, it can be challenging, because our little personalities are real strong and they want to get a nice pat on the back and feel good about themselves. So ironically enough, the best you feel is when you've taken yourself out of the equation.